Warren Sprouse. Is the Biden administration targeting Christian schools? ProphecyNewsWatch.com had an article this week. I grew up in America. I'm old. Every morning in school, public school, we heard the Bible read to us. They read Old Testament passages in homeroom. Then we stood up, we recited the Lord's Prayer, and we saluted the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of these United States, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. These are the kinds of things that colored our life in positive ways. Whether you were a Christian, whether you cared about God, Jesus, or anything, or the Bible, you were influenced, programmed. Now, the forces of evil are working to rid America of any and all vestiges of God. Here's a case in point. The Human Rights Campaign, HRC, America's largest and most powerful LGBT lobby organization, is pushing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to target Christian educational institutions, demanding that the Biden administration strip colleges of funding, colleges that adhere to rules and positions that oppose homosexuality. The HRC's Blueprint for Positive Change offers 85 recommendations proposing the eliminating non-discrimination exemptions for religious colleges if they refuse to abandon the biblical position on marriage. Separation of church and state, anybody? In clear text for all the world to see, the Human Rights Campaign summons the Biden administration to deny accreditation, or at the very least, to facilitate the denial of accreditation to Christian organizations, Christian colleges, and universities, and for that matter, any other religious institution or school that does not meet the demands of the LGBTQ orthodoxy. Christian day schools, daycare facilities, boys and girls clubs, the list goes on. This would essentially mean abandoning biblical standards for teaching, for hiring, admissions, housing, student life. It would mean that Christian schools could no longer be Christian. Al Mohler, a theologian, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, sounded the alarm on HRC's push in an essay he called A Direct Threat to Christian Education. In this, he maintains that the HRC is demanding that the State Department, one, include a non-binary gender marker on identification such as passports and so forth. Secondly, that they form a panel to explore how the LGBT agenda can be classified as inalienable rights and how this agenda can be pushed in international relations. But probably the most dangerous proposal in Mohler's thinking is aimed at essentially destroying Christian institutions overnight. As Mohler put it, the blueprint states language regarding accreditation of religious institutions of higher education in the Higher Education Opportunity Act would be interpreted to require accrediting bodies to accredit religious institutions. So, the Department of Education should issue a regulation clarifying that this provision, which requires accreditation agencies to respect the state admission of religious organizations, does not require the accreditation of religious institutions which have a religious reason for not embracing the behaviors of people who do not respect the values, principles, and immutable standards of Bible-based religious institutions. That's a mouthful. It includes accreditation standards, non-discrimination policies, scientific curriculum requirements. In terms of accreditation, the policy suggested by HRC is an atomic bomb. It's insidious from the top to the bottom. Schools that will not get in line with the moral revolution, if the Biden administration gets what they want, will be denied their accreditation. And don't miss the language. Accreditation should be revoked for those who do not meet LGBT non discrimination standards or science based curricula standards. The Christian day school that our church started in 1979, you remember 1979, don't you? Was not an accredited school, purposely. That school ran continuously from the spring of 1979, the fall of 1979, until the spring of 2019 or 2020, I can't remember which. It was in business for 40 years. In the end, the last decade or two, the people who were running it, the teachers and monitors and all the rest of it, that kept it all together, were the kindergarten and first grade students we had in that school to start with. But since we were not accredited, graduates had to take a test in order to get into college. Oh, wait a minute. Every student has to take a test to get into college. Colleges don't just take students because they graduated from accredited schools. And private school students generally do better, statistically. Now, consider this. The Human Rights Campaign is not known for any particular agenda on the creation evolution front, nor is the group preoccupied with particle physics. Clearly, the Human Rights Campaign is targeting issues of sexual orientation, gender identity, cloaking them in the language of science. This is an undisguised effort to require Christian schools and colleges to abandon biblical authority or lose accreditation. An open threat to the ability of Christian colleges and schools to operate by Christian conviction. It's an outright attempt to eliminate religious freedom for Christian schools or for any religious school that refuses to bow to the moral revolutionaries of the Human Rights Campaign. Mohler further noted that this is, quote, an undisguised attempt to shut down any semblance of Christian college or university that would possess the audacity to operate from a Christian worldview, end of quote. The Human Rights Campaign and other LGBT organizations, infuriated by the 4-year pause in the Rainbow Blitzkrieg transforming American institutions, is going to come after Christians with a vengeance. Joe Biden, it must be noted, is a radical. He is just as radical as the HRC is on this issue. He openly promised every LGBT leader who would listen that he would be their man in the White House. And for LGBT activists, this means going after their enemies. Their enemies, as the HRC has made clear once again, are those who refuse to join the Pride Parade and stubbornly cling to beliefs and traditions that have lasted for thousands and thousands of years, rather than joining them on the right side of history, which is roughly less than 2 decades old. They have been meticulously researching methods of toppling Christian institutions. This blueprint for positive change is just a start.